Sienna here from Yoga Mountain. I want to talk to you about your hamstrings, not Charlie's hamstrings. It doesn't look like he has any, but your hamstrings, because it impacts the health of your hip joint. So the hamstrings connect to your ischial tuberosity, which is the base of your pelvis, and come across the back of your knee. Some of the hamstrings come to the outside of the knee, all the way down to the fibula, and the other part of the hamstring comes down to the inside of the knee where the tibia is. When your hamstrings are tight, what they do is they pull down on the back of your pelvis. When they pull down on the back of your pelvis, it tips your pelvis back. When your pelvis tips back, it flattens your lumbar spine, so that can lead to discompression. It also changes the way the femoral head, this bone here, sits in the hip socket. This is your hip socket here. And so it can cause some wear and tear inside the acetabulum. Now, why are the hamstrings tight for a lot of us? We do a lot of sitting. So when we sit, what the hamstrings do is they flex the knee. So as I sit and my knee is in flexion, the hamstrings are short, and sometimes they're actually working as well. But definitely they're in a shortened state. Also, when I'm sitting, my glutes are not working. So when you have tight hamstrings or short hamstrings and weak glute, those two things often go together, and they create a combination that's really not good for your hip joint or for your knees or your lower back for that matter. So what can we do? I have a really quick and easy way for you to do a couple of strengthening techniques and stretching techniques that will take care of these issues. One of my favorite things to do is this lunge. Now, it's not a straight leg lunge that you see in yoga a lot. It's a bent knee lunge, because you're actually using the weight of your back knee to strengthen and put more weight into your front leg, which is going to strengthen your gluteus muscle. Then you step forward into a chair position, which continues to strengthen the glute muscle, especially if you pour the weight into your heels instead of the balls of your feet, and you sit back like you're sitting in a chair. So don't sit forward like this. This puts pressure on your knee joint. Instead, sit back as far as you can. Then step back with the other foot and hover the back knee over the floor like this. And then squeeze into the hamstring or the gluteus muscle here. And you can see a hamstring is working too. So I'm going to go back to the first side. After you do about 10 of those, you can wiggle your foot back and now straighten the back leg, which causes the hamstring to lengthen. You use your glute muscle to extend the hip. So this is hip extension, something that the glute muscle is really good at and supposed to support. Then it also helps open the hip flexors here. Coincidentally, when you're in a seated position in your chair, often at the desk or in your car, your hip flexors are short and tight. So doing this variation, I'll show you the whole thing. So step back, hover, hold, take a few breaths. Step forward, keep both knees bent. Step the other leg back, hover, hold. Step forward, keep both knees bent, sit back. Step the other leg back. After you do about 10 of those, then straighten the back leg and open up the psoas muscle, the hip flexor. You can bring your arms up too. Okay. So after you do all that, it's harder than it looks. I'm panting a little bit. Then you can do two different hamstring stretches. One is kneeling, and you stretch one leg. This is a typical runner stretch. So make sure that you're not rounding your spine here. You want to keep your spine nice and long and keep your leg on the straight side. You can do 2 times each side, and I recommend holding that for about 30 seconds. Another thing you can do is the typical hamstring stretch, especially in a yoga class, called Supta Padangusthasana 1, where you put your strap on the ball of the foot and then you pull the leg in. So in this position, your hamstring's in a lengthened state, right? If the hamstring was in a short state, the knee would be bent, because remember, the hamstrings flex the knee and extend the hip. Right now, the hip is in flexion and the knee is in flexion. So to get the hamstring to stretch, we need to extend the knee Now my hamstring is getting longer, and I'm going to hold the stretch with some action in my quads. So I'm using my quadriceps to engage the straight leg, and then I'm pushing up through my heel to lengthen my hamstrings. Meanwhile, my other leg is flat on the floor. Okay, so holding this for 30 to 40 seconds. Another thing you can do to get the inner and outer hamstring, because you have 3, is you can move your foot a little bit to the inside, and that will tend to get the outer edge of your hamstring, the third hamstring, the lateral side. Or you can move your leg a little bit out to the side, and that gets more of your inner hamstring. So more of a complete hamstring opener that way. Okay, don't forget to do the other side. And I always recommend when you do poses like this that you do it twice to each side, not just one. So err on the side of doing it twice to each side for shorter holds rather than just once to each side for longer holds. That's my hip health tip for today about hamstrings and glutes. I hope you have an awesome day.